9:01, welcome back. The NDP calling on the Liberals to lower rent and address Canada's housing crisis. Federal NDP Leader Jagmeet Singh is joining me live now in studio with more on how the party's expectations are ahead of the government's fall economic statement, which is set for next Tuesday.
Right.
Mr. Singh, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll talk about yesterday. So you were here in Toronto holding a news conference, kind of laying out your expectations. One of which I'll start with is food prices, grocery prices. What do you expect to come from the Liberals next week when the fall economic statement is released versus what you would like to see in terms of tackling grocery prices, how high they are now?
Yeah, I want to start off by how bad things are. We are hearing from people how tough it is to afford groceries. People with good jobs are saying, I don't get how people do this. Our budgets are so squeezed. High cost of rent, high cost of groceries, all of it is just squeezing us. So we want to see action. And the Liberals' plan so far was to ask the CEOs of these large corporate grocery stores nicely to stabilize the prices. And that plan turned out to be a complete farce. It didn't work. It didn't make any sense because you can't just ask people nicely whose job it is to make profits to stabilize prices. That's not going to work. So what we want to see is legislation, laws that protect consumers, that force these large corporate grocery stores to stop exploiting people. And that's what I propose with my bill. And I want to see some of that action taken to concretely lower prices for people who are saying, how do we do this? How do we afford our groceries?
And I know you don't have an inside track on what will be released next week, but are you confident that legislation, something concrete like that, will be tabled, considering the path that the Liberals have taken so far?
Well, I'm not confident given the path they've taken, which has not been using legislative tools. But we are in negotiations. We have put forward my bill, which would force these large corporate grocery stores to bring down prices with concrete measures that the Competition Bureau itself recommended. So I hope we can see that happen. That's what we're fighting for. That's one of the expectations I have.
All right. You talked about affordable housing as well when it comes to lowering rent, especially for those who are seeing the skyrocketing rent prices right across the country. When it comes to that, we know that here in Ontario, there was a fall economic statement that was recently released. It did not include any kind of rent control. What would you like to see in terms of the federal government and the provincial government trying to work on that as an immediate measure to try to control rent?
Well, we need affordable homes. We need affordable rent. And what I'm concerned about at the federal level, we can't control, we don't have the power for rent control, but we do have the power to build more homes. So far, the Liberals' plan has been to build homes on public land. One example, in Edmonton, a project, over 400 homes, but only 13% of them are affordable. So if we're using public land, land that we own as the people, every single home on that public piece of land should be affordable. That's my concern. There's not a focus on affordability. I met with people at a meeting when I made that press conference just earlier that day. I met with people who told me we cannot afford the cost of a luxury condo. That's not going to make my life better. You build a whole bunch more towers of luxury condos, they're out of my reach. That's not going to help me and my family out. So we need to focus on affordability. That's what we're focusing on.
Okay, and we're also keeping an eye on the pharmacare deal. You have said yesterday that you don't expect the fall economic statement next week to resolve this and present what the NDP is looking for when it comes to national pharmacare. But this is indeed a staple of the supply and confidence deal that you do have with the Liberals in terms of supporting them in the House of Commons. If you don't get a deal by the end of the year, which is quickly approaching, what happens with that supply and confidence deal?
We were in this very same situation last year. And the reason why I bring that up is we were told, the Liberals told us they could not meet the deadline for, at that time, it was the dental care program for kids under 12. They said, we can't do it. We don't have enough time. We're up against a deadline that we just can't meet. And we said, no, it's not good enough. We need to get it done. We got it done, and over 300,000 kids were able to get to see a dentist because of the program we fought for. Similarly, we're up against the same timeline right now where they're saying they can't do it. We're at odds. We want a plan that covers all people. They want a plan that benefits insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies. We disagree. We think it should be a focus on people, on workers, on seniors, not a focus on these wealthy corporations. So that's our impasse. That's our sticking point. But we are confident we can keep on fighting to get some results for people.
Okay. If you don't
Well, I'm not even going to
doesn't
entertain that.
happen.
I'm not even going to entertain it because it was the same thing they told us last time. They couldn't do it. It's not going to happen. I said, no, we're going to make it happen. And so we're going to keep that confidence. We're going to keep on negotiating. We're going to keep on fighting. Our plan is let's do everything we can with the power we have to give people a break. We're bringing in dental care for seniors. We're going to bring dental care in for all kids. We're going to fight to make sure pharmacare is also a next big step.
There were questions about how solid the supply and confidence deal is with the Liberals, especially considering that the NDP backed a conservative motion when it came to pausing the carbon tax recently. That's something that just, it seemed for some to come out of nowhere and possibly signal some cracks in this deal. We've also seen polls coming out recently where people have been heavily criticizing the Prime Minister. Some calling for his resignation before the next election. If there is indeed a change when it comes to the leadership of the Liberals in any way, will your deal continue?
We don't know what's going to happen with the leadership of the Liberal Party. That's a question, I guess, for them to answer. Our focus is really what our guiding light is, like what is our principle around how do we deal with what we do moving forward. It's can we continue to deliver help for people? Can we continue to deliver our dental care program? Can we continue to deliver something that gives people some break when they're dealing with so many costs in their lives? That's what guides us. As long as we can keep on delivering, we're going to do that.
Okay. And right now, the next election not set until 2025. Are you confident that you think we can make it to that point right now without having anything interjected in between now and then?
We don't know. Really often it depends on the government, but on our end, our goal is if we can keep on delivering help for people, if we can keep on forcing this government to do things that people need them to do, then we're going to keep on doing that. If we get to a point where that's not possible, then we'll reevaluate. But that's been our focus. Right now, we want to see lower rents, we want to see affordable housing, and we want to see lower grocery prices. And that's our expectation for the fall economic statement. Okay,
and that again is coming up next Tuesday. But I do want to ask you as well about international news, especially we're keeping a very close watch on the Israel-Hamas war. And this is impacting so many Canadians, people who have family members who are there in Gaza, in Israel, who have been directly affected by this tragedy on both sides. The NDP caucus has written a letter to the Prime Minister previously calling for a ceasefire, but even that word, the calling for a ceasefire, is something that is a loaded word for some. Do you stand by that? Are you calling for a ceasefire in the sense of stopping this, even though the Israeli government is saying that a ceasefire means that Hamas wins?
We first of all, we taking a step back. What's going on is heartbreaking. We see the images, we see the loss of life. We know that for Israelis who have loved ones that are still hostages, it is something that I can't imagine the fear that they're going through. For Palestinians that see their family members going through so much violence, loss of life, death and destruction, I know it's heartbreaking for them as well. I met with both communities. I've met with Jewish Canadians. I've met with Palestinian Canadians as well as Muslim Canadians. And I know how difficult this is. And so what we're saying is we need to see the hostages released. We acknowledge that Hamas is a terrorist group that committed an atrocious attack. And we also want to see the violence stop so we can save lives. And I think Canada can play a real significant role in saying, as a nation that's always been one that's peace-loving, that supported the call for moving towards peace, let's support a release of all hostages and a ceasefire stance and play a role on the world stage to hopefully save some lives. All right. Jagmeet Singh, thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate you taking the time out to join us here on BT. I hope to have you back soon. Yeah, I would love to. That's awesome. Thank you. All right. It is